The TimeStopper by Atif Khan. Key facts that are referenced in this story: Mayan civilization. All references to the names of Mayan gods are accurate. The Kukulkan Pyramid and the Temple of Warriors and their location in Chichen Itza are factual places in Mexico that still exist today. 2012 Doomsday Predictions. The WebBot project is a real computer program, and any references made to its predications are factual. The Mayan calendar is also a real artifact that ended abruptly on 21 St. Dec, 2012, giving rise to the notion that Mayans believed the world would end. The I Ching is a real ancient divination text that predicted the end of the world in Dec 2012. Any doomsday references to it are factual. Prologue. The elevators slid closed and Adam looked at his G-Shock watch. It read 5:48 p.m. It's almost 6 p.m. I've got 2 floors left. I can do this. I can make it out by midnight. I've got plenty of time. Adam instantly wished that he could unthink that last thought. He didn't want to jinx himself. Be positive. You can do this. The elevator chimed as it stopped on the 2nd floor. The doors slid open. He looked at the wall and there was another A4 sheet of paper stuck on it. This time, it simply said Time Mastery. Adam stepped out of the elevator but then heard a click. Swoosh! He turned his head and something dark bolted towards him. It was so fast he could barely see it. It hit his shoulder, spinning him and knocking him to the ground. His shoulder burned in agony as he felt something wet on his shirt. Oh my God, that's blood! I'm hit! Adam grabbed his shoulder and winced in pain. He felt his blood run down his arm. The hallway was set up like a shooting range, and he was the target. Chapter 1. 2 months earlier. It happened again. Tonight, it was the worst it had ever been. Adam woke up soaked in a pool of sweat in his bed, and despite it being a hot summer night, he was shivering. Cold and damp, he groaned, knowing that the usual ritual of finding a change of pajamas and having to change the sheets was now upon him. A task he rather not undertake half asleep at 3 a.m. Unfortunately, it was a necessary evil if he wanted to enjoy his last few hours in bed. Adam rubbed his eyes in the bathroom mirror. He was only 16, but he looked and felt drained right now. Looking at his reflection, he wondered when he'd grow out of this embarrassingly horrid puberty phase. Although his voice had finally broken and somewhat settled, his facial hair was sparse and embarrassing, and the mild acne didn't do him any favours either. Great, another one, he grimaced as he poked the blotchy red mound. He quickly scanned the rest of his face for other newcomers, but thankfully there were none. Back in bed and wrapped in the light summer duvet, he felt cosy in his fresh pajamas and crisp new bed sheets. He lay there, now wide awake, wondering what had happened. Man, why can't I just dream of unicorns like normal people? He could never quite remember his nightmares afterwards. He tried closing his eyes and recalling the last part of it just before he woke up. But there were no images. There were no sounds. Just a sickly feeling in the pit of his stomach, like being hungry and full at the same time. But the headaches were the worst part. The dull pounding and spinning would take ages to die down. It reminded him of the feeling he got immediately after getting off a roller coaster. At least this time, he didn't break anything. His last nightmare had somehow left him across the room. He only awoke once he heard his mirror smash into 100 pieces. He lay there in the dark and tried distracting himself. Sometimes thinking of something else helped. He knew exactly what would take his mind off the pain. He closed his eyes and there she was, like an angel of peace, serenity, and joy. Nikita, the most beautiful girl in school. But despite being good friends with her, she had no idea about his true feelings. Adam envisaged her floating towards him. He smiled to himself as he closed his eyes, and before long, sleep washed over him. Chapter 2. Friends like these. Adam loved London during summer. He felt that the cityscape came alive during the warm summer evenings. There was something mesmerizing about gazing at Canary Wharf and the buildings that surrounded it during sunset, watching all the pinks and purples in the sky turn darker and darker as the sun went down. Adam often gazed out of the balcony from his two-bedroom council flat in Poplar, watching tiny lights in the buildings flicker as people left the office for the day. He liked living in the East End of London. It was always busy and buzzing with life. He wondered how amazing it'd be to finally move out of this flat and get his own place away from his mum and younger sister. His own space. Suddenly, his cell phone beeped as a text arrived from Z. "We're at the park, dude. Come down." "Going out, Mum," Adam yelled to his mother. "Where are you going?" she asked, unsurprised. She knew that Adam and his friends usually hung out in Mile End Park during the holidays. She'd caught him drinking there once, and now knew perfectly well what 16-year-old boys got up to unsupervised. His mother knew him a lot better than he thought she did. Despite her concerns about his social life, talking him out meeting with his friends was pointless. They'd argued about it many times before. To her, he was still that little boy who she used to dress and take care of, but he was now turning into a man, and that meant letting go of the reins a little. They had agreed a suitable compromise, a reasonable curfew that must never be broken, set for 11 p.m. sharp. "Out!" he yelled as he twisted his foot into his trainers. "Meeting Z in the park." Adam grabbed his keys and wallet. "Phone, check. Wallet, check. Keys, check." He muttered to himself. "Well, be back by 11, okay? You remember our deal, right?" The last time Adam was out, he wasn't home till 11:45, and he was now out of warnings. All right. Man, thought Adam. Man, I can't wait to get my own place. Yeah, he replied, annoyed that she felt he needed reminding. It was only a short walk from where Adam lived, and he took the path he always did, through the inroads and back alleys. He had walked this route to the park hundreds of times, and he was there within 7 minutes. He didn't usually have to search hard to find his friend. They were exactly where they always were, sat on top of the small hill in the park by the swings. "Sup, bro?" yelled Z from on top of the hill as he staggered to his feet. He was clearly already high. Z was like a weed-smoking machine. No time of the day was too early or too late. The only time he wasn't high was when he was on his way to buy more weed. Adam helped him up and laughed at how red Z's eyes were. "Bro, you look proper red-eyed Jedi," Adam joked. Z smiled. "Dude, I've got this sick haze. Just picked it up. You've got to try it. Banging, bruv." "Banging?" Z often got overly excited when he'd talk about cannabis. In fact, he'd get overly excited talking about most things, whether it'd be about a girl he liked, or a car he drove, or the day he'd had. Z's passion often misled people into believing something was a lot better than it actually was, but not Adam. Adam knew better. Ironically, it was exactly this personal attribute that Adam loved about Z. There was never a dull moment when he was around, and his stories, although exaggerated, were enjoyable nonetheless. Adam didn't need a weed sales pitch. He needed the pick-me-up and would have smoked anything. "Z, you said that last time, and that weed last time was dusty, man," he said as he shook his hand and gave him a one-armed hug. Z took another pull of the joint. "Junior, just try it." Adam had become accustomed to being called Junior by Z. They first met during work experience last year, and the boss was also called Adam. To avoid confusion, the office began referring to the boss as Senior, and the younger Adam got the less prestigious nickname of Junior. "Hey, you!" a voice called out. Nikita was sat with her long legs crossed and stretched out in front of her on top of the hill smoking a cigarette. She was beautiful, and at that moment in the evening light, she looked gorgeous. Her tight white vest top accentuated her curves, and the blue denim short shorts always made men, young and old, stare. Adam tried not to gawk at her toned legs stretched out on the soft grass. She turned on her side to face Adam and smiled. They'd been in the same class since they were 11 years old. Adam secretly liked her then, and he secretly liked her now. It was only after he turned 14 that her group of friends and his group of friends started hanging out together. He was fairly certain that having access to drugs and alcohol was what gave them common ground, but hanging out almost every day built a strong bond between them all. "Hey," Adam replied, smiling as he tried to remain smooth. "Loving the tan," he joked as he pointed to her pasty white legs. Getting little digs on her usually helped ease his nerves around her. Nikita blushed as she became self-conscious about her bar legs. "It's a work in progress," she joked. "You love them, really?" Her Turkish heritage had blessed her with a skin that glowed during summer. However, it had been a particularly cold spring in London this year. It was almost the end of June, but her pale legs were a far cry from the tanned shade of brown they usually were by now. Adam caught himself staring and looked away. "Yo!" The voice took Adam by surprise. It came from behind him, but he didn't need to turn around to know who it was. "Took your sweet time, playa." Adam spun around and saw Adil walking towards him. As if pre-programmed to do so, they both raised their right hands and clapped them together with hands gripped. They pulled each other in for a brief, one-armed hug. "Damn, dude, didn't even see you there." Adam was glad to see Adil, but he suddenly recalled that Adil had a prior appointment today. "Wait, what the heck are you doing here? I thought you said you had a job interview today." "Already done it," he replied smugly. "They called me up this morning and asked if I could come in earlier." Adil extended his hand to Z, who took a quick pull of the joint before handing it over to him. "Someone backed out, so I thought heck with it. Why not? Just get it over and done with." Adil took a deep inhalation. "I've been cacking myself about this interview all week, so the sooner it's over with, the better." He let out the smoke slowly, watching the smoke billow out. Adam looked at his friend up and down. It wasn't often he got to see him in a shirt and trousers. Coming straight from the interview. Adil realised Adam was referring to his attire. "Yeah, if I went home first, Mum wouldn't let me out again without making me eat and sort my room out." He took another inhalation on the joint. Didn't want to be late to the party. He smiled as he exhaled the thick cloud of smoke and passed the joint over to Adam. Adam took a drag. "Well, at least you're getting interviews, bro." He exhaled sharply and resisted the urge to cough. "How'd it go anyway?" "Ah, man, I don't know." Adil stared down at his feet, brushing the blades of grass with his shoes. "Most of it went well, but I think I messed up one of the questions, but sod it. It's done now. So, no point worry about it, let's just see what happens." Adil's ability to remove stress from his life was enviable. It was evident from his childhood that he would be destined for great things. He was a naturally gifted child and excelled in school. A straight A student, and part of almost every extracurricular kids club imaginable. It was a mystery to Adam how, despite all his geeky habits, he was never really bullied at school. "You know you're probably going to get it," Adam replied in an uplifting tone, handing the joint back to Z. "Thanks, bro." Adil looked up and smiled. He loved how Adam always supported him and made him feel sure of himself. "So, ladies," Z interjected as he pulled out a large Ziploc bag from his pocket filled with fluffy green buds. "Are we going to talk, or are we going to smoke?" Z wrapped his arms around them both and marched them to where Nikita was sat, still bathing in the final few rays of the sun. Adam smiled as he dived into his pockets and produced a box of cheap cigarettes and rolling paper. "Let's smoke." It was just past 10:45 p.m, and Adam knew that he would get into trouble if he didn't leave soon. Summer had just begun, and he didn't want to be grounded for any of it. "Guys, I'm going to head off. I'm proper buzzin', and my mum is going to kick my ass if I'm not home before 11. "Dude, what are you, a baby?" Z jibed in an obvious attempt to get Adam to stay. Z also lived without his father, but unlike other kids his age, his mum seemed pretty relaxed with him being out, regardless of the time. Everyone in the group wished that their mum was as chilled as Z's. He always got to stay out till the party was well and truly over. And then some. "Bro, you know what my mum's like? Her house, her rules, and all that crap." Adam hated that saying. It was his mother's trump card whenever the argument wasn't going her way. Adil was sat gently swinging on the adult swings nearby. He was just staring across the park in the darkness, clearly thinking about something. "You know what we should all do?" he suddenly chimed. "Get a place of our own and split the rent. It'd be so much fun. I'm sure that if we all got jobs, we could afford it." It was common for moments of inspiration to descend suddenly and without warning whenever they smoked marijuana. Adam often wished that he kept a notepad on him whenever they smoked. Some of the conversations were mind-blowing new perspectives on life. The only problem was that they were too high to remember them afterwards. "Sure, I'll just cash in my trust fund, shall I?" Nikita joked. "No, seriously, it'd be totally doable if we all chipped in together." Adil had clearly been thinking about this for some time. Adam threw his arm over Adil's shoulders. "Dude, as much as I'd love to, it's not going to work. We're all broke and we're all jobless. You've also forgotten to factor in our parents, credit checks, and the deposit." Adil began to realize that in reality it wasn't so simple. Adam sensed that Adil seemed slightly dejected by his response. "Maybe one day, man, when we're all a little older and a little richer," Adam comforted. "Anyway, guys, I seriously got a jet, so I'm out." Adam went through the usual goodbye routine of high fives and one-armed hugs with the guys. He finally approached Nikita and gave her a gentle hug and a kiss on the cheek. It was their little tradition. The girls in the gang always got a hug and a peck on the cheek. In a strange way, it made Adam feel grown up. Recently, however, his friendly goodbye hugs with Nikita were lingering just a little longer than usual. He noticed that the hugs were a bit tighter, and the previously innocent kisses were beginning to slowly creep closer to the lips. Adam kissed her goodbye and felt the edge of her lip on his. His heart pounded as he pulled away, pretending not to notice. He stared at Nikita to gauge her reaction, but she just smiled and stared back completely unfazed. By the way," he said, breaking the awkward tension, "what happened to Tanya and Claire tonight?" Nikita smiled as she realized Adam was trying to diffuse the awkwardness of the semi-kiss they'd just shared. "Tanya's out with her boyfriend. I think they've gone to the cinema. I don't know about Claire." "Claire's with her mum," Adil interjected, oblivious to any awkwardness. "They've gone shopping, Lakeside, I think." "Cool. Well, when you speak to them, tell them I said hi." Adam began walking towards the park gate. "Z, call me tomorrow if you want to do something, yeah?" "Safe, Junior," he yelled back. "Laters." Adam pressed the button on his white G-Shock watch, and his dial instantly illuminated into a bright turquoise. 10:51. Bang on time. He walked as quickly as he could through the familiar streets he grew up in. His head was still swimming with the effects of the marijuana. It was a pleasant, hazy feeling, but something in his mind was feeling strange right now. Adam had been smoking marijuana for over a year now, ever since his Uncle Sam first introduced it to him. Sam never felt like an uncle to Adam, not in the traditional sense. Sam was Adam's dad's younger brother. A small 7-year gap meant that whilst growing up, they often hung out at Sam's house where he lived with Adam's grandma. Grandma Sheila was awesome and loved Adam to bits. She was notoriously harsh on her own kids, but she was never harsh with Adam. He was her first and eldest grandchild. Grandma Sheila had a strong work ethic and ran her own jewellery stall at Queen's Market in East Ham, near the West Ham football grounds in London. On the weekends, she'd leave at 5 a.m. in the morning, rain or shine, and sell her fashion accessories until well past 8 p.m. He was only 12 when he started helping Grandma run the stall on Saturdays. Occasionally he'd make $5 a day, but if it was a particularly bad day, he was content in being paid in sweets from the sweet shop around the corner. Grandma's busy life meant that the house was pretty much Sam's for most of the day. He was a university student and often had cool older friends over at the house. Sam loved spending time with Adam, and they'd often cruise around in Sam's car, play board games, watch movies, and smoke the occasional cigarette. Adam didn't always like the taste or the smell, but the habit began to grow on him. One day, Sam took Adam to visit Ross, a new friend Sam met at university. Adam was mesmerized as he watched Ross prepare a marijuana joint with delicate precision and attention to detail. To Adam, when Ross had finished, the joint looked like a piece of art, beautifully shaped and packed full of cannabis. Having rolled up, Ross grabbed his lighter and looked up at Sam. "Is it cool?" he asked, referring to the fact that Adam was in the room with them. "Yeah, man, Adam's safe," Sam assured. Adam smelled the wondrous aroma instantly fill the room as Ross lit the joint. It was a strange, sweet, sickly smell, but he liked it. To Adam, it definitely smelled better than cigarettes. Before long, the joint found its way over to Adam. He looked over at Sam for approval. "Just a little tug," Sam warned. "Take it easy, it's strong." Adam sucked on the joint as if it were a cigarette and inhaled the thick, unfiltered smoke. He instantly began coughing and spluttering. Ross burst into laughter. "He warned you it was strong, dude. That blast you just took was Rasta level, man." Sam took the joint away from Adam. "You okay?" The coughing soon passed and Adam was transported to a comfortable, dreamlike state. "Yeah," Adam replied, suddenly feeling very drowsy. Adam melted into the sofa with a smile on his face, laughing uncontrollably at the slightest provocation for the rest of the afternoon. Adam knew from that day he loved marijuana. Coincidentally, his friends at school also started getting into it, which made getting hold of it a lot easier. By the time he turned 15, almost everyone he knew smoked it at social get-togethers. Despite being familiar with its effects, walking home from the park right now, the marijuana was having an odd effect on him. Adam had to stop for a moment. He knew that his mum would ground him for sure if he was late, but he was feeling dizzy and almost tripped over as he missed the curb. Damn, Z was right. What the heck is in this weed? He placed his palm on a gritty brick wall to stabilize himself. Everything was swaying. The building, the road, the street lights, everything was moving. Wait. This isn't the weed. Weed doesn't do this. What the heck is going on? He tried to shake his head and clear his mind, but it only made it worse. The more he focused on the road, the more things were moving. He suddenly realized that he had felt this feeling before. Something was familiar about all this, but he couldn't think straight. The motion in his head was making him dizzy. He had to sit down. "Don't sit down. If you sit down now, you won't get back up. Keep going," he urged himself. He knew he had to make it home. "Don't sit here on the street like a homeless crackhead, Adam. Don't do it." This was his neighborhood. He worried that if anyone familiar with his family saw him, it'd get straight back to his mum, and she'd kill him if she found out he had taken drugs. He held his head in his hands and closed his eyes to help stop the swaying. Nothing was working. He rested against the wall and slowly slid down until he was sat on the floor, completely incapable of movement. Every so often, he opened his eyes to see if the swaying and stopped, but it was unrelenting. No one was around to help him. He sat there mentally crippled, all alone and isolated. Help me, God. It seemed his prayer had been almost instantly answered. As he looked up and out of nowhere, he saw something at the far end of the alleyway. Everything was moving so dramatically that he wasn't sure whether it was the shadow of a wheelie bin, a person, or an angel. But whatever it wasn't there before. As he tried to focus, it seemed to look like someone was standing there, just watching him. "Help!" Adam pleaded. But the shadow just stood there. Adam had to close his eyes. He was about to vomit. He couldn't take the swaying anymore. With his eyes closed, he mustered a much louder call. "Help!" he yelled. He took a deep breath and opened his eyes to look up again. The figure had moved. He could now tell that it was a man walking towards him. The light was behind him in an otherwise dark alleyway, making him appear as black as a silhouette. Adam tried to focus. Only the outline of his frame was distinguishable. But Adam noticed he was tall and wearing a dark jacket and big boots. Thank God. Someone's here to help. Suddenly he realized why all this was feeling so familiar to him. My nightmares. He recalled his most recent episode only 10 days ago. They started when he was just 13 years old. They occurred once every few months. But over time, they began occurring more and more frequently. Being a teenage boy, he preferred to keep his embarrassing secrets hidden. He didn't tell his friends out of fear of ridicule, and kept it from his mother because he knew she'd make a huge fuss, worry unnecessarily, and insist on spending hours waiting in the A&E department of a hospital, only to be told by an overworked NHS doctor that everything was fine, and to go home. But as he sat there paralysed on the cold, hard road, he regretted his decision. He wished he had told everyone. With his nightmares now on his mind, the swaying and dizziness got worse. Everything in his vision was now violently shaking. It was like an earthquake rapidly escalating up the Richter scale in his mind. He couldn't take it anymore. His stomach turned as the motion sickness took hold and he threw up on the side of the road. His head dropped as everything began to fade to black. With his last few moments of consciousness, he saw the dark figure of the man in the black coat and boots walking towards him. It was too late. The darkness took over and everything went black. Trapped in the darkness, Adam called out into the pitch-black void of his empty mind. "Help me." Although the words didn't reach Adam's physical lips, the dark stranger seemed to respond to them. He stood above Adam's limp body directly beneath a streetlight, his face masked in shadow. Adam tried in vain to open his eyes, but his body simply refused to obey. Despite his inability to see, he could feel the stranger was close. He felt a strange aura emanating from within him that he couldn't quite comprehend. He knew he was in the presence of someone strong, and not just in a physical sense. Instead of feeling fearful, an unusual sense of comfort washed over Adam, as if he had just met his guardian angel. "You're nowhere near ready, Adam." His voice was warped as if it had been slowed down on a record player, but it pierced straight through the darkness, and the physical words painted themselves in colourful red paint in Adam's mind. In his mind's eye, he looked at the words and he focused on the last word of the sentence. He knew my name, but Adam was sure he'd never met this person before. Adam began to hear a sound. He wasn't sure if it was in the physical world or just in his mind. The paint before him began vibrating. The sound was like the annoying monotone of a television channel when the broadcasting signal had ended for the day. The paint began vibrating harder and harder as the piercing tone grew louder and louder. As the tone peaked into a deafening noise, the words suddenly shattered in his mind and Adam lost all consciousness. Everything went dark. Adam woke up and realized he wasn't in the alleyway anymore. For a moment he didn't know where he was. He looked around as he cautiously got to his feet. He realized that he'd been sitting on the floor, half propped up against the wall. He then recognized the recycling bins. He turned around and looked for more familiar landmarks and realized he was actually outside his own council block. What the hell? A mixture of relief and confusion overwhelmed him. He checked his watch. 11:21 p.m. Damn, how did I just lose 31 minutes? He tried to recollect how he'd got here. Then, like a tsunami, everything came flooding back. He remembered his seizure, his blackout, the strange man in the boots, everything. Instinctively, he scanned himself to check if his phone, wallet and keys were still with him. After a quick self-pat-down, everything checked out okay. He opened his wallet to ensure nothing had been stolen. His bank cards, national insurance card, and game store card were all still there, along with his 2 crumpled $5 notes. He finally breathed a sigh of relief and realized that his gut feeling about the man was right. He was a good guy. His panic faded and was immediately replaced by gratitude. He looked up and thanked God for sending an angel to his aid at his time of need. Z and Adil are gonna freak when they hear about this one. He headed towards the security door that led to the internal lifts. As he used his fob to buzz himself in, his mind began to clear and more unanswered questions began to arise. Wait, how did he get me back here? Then Adam's face turned pale. How did he know where I lived? Adam's head was a mess. He didn't know what problem to focus on first. It was now 11:24 p.m., and Adam knew he was in trouble with Mum when he got home. There goes my summer. Dejected, he pressed the button for the 3RD floor, knowing that this time his mum wouldn't let it slide. The lift doors slowly closed as it jerked and hummed to life, slowly hauling him up. I can't tell her the truth. She'd worry too much and never let me go out again. He cycled through excuses in his mind to see if he could dream up anything even remotely plausible enough to save him. The buses were running late. No, the park is too close for a bus. Wait, I got mugged. No, that would just make it worse. The police? Adam felt a spark of inspiration. Yes, the police stopped us. That would work. Yeah, it wasn't my fault. I'll tell her the police questioned us for hanging out in the park after dark. It was plausible enough. The police presence in the area over the past few years was significantly higher than it used to be, and everyone had noticed it. Officers were often seen patrolling the parks around East London, watching out for kids Adam's age. Perfect. Adam opened the door to the flat as quietly as he could, but the latch on the lock seemed extra loud tonight. Click, clack. He winced as he closed the door behind him. He illuminated his oversized G-Shock watch. 11:28 p.m. Crap! Please be asleep, please be asleep. As he peeped inside, he noticed all the lights were off, but a familiar glow was coming from the living room. Damn it, TV's still on. Mum's definitely awake. He crept quietly towards his bedroom, trying to avoid her altogether. He figured it'd be easier to deal with her in the morning. Adam! Bellowed his mum. Get in here now! Adam let out a heavy sigh. There was no avoiding her tonight. Time to face the music. He walked towards the living room, now feeling free to make as much noise as he wanted. No need for stealth now. Hey, Mum, he said, trying to be as nonchalant as he could. What time you call this? Adam could tell by her tone that she was livid. It's almost midnight. Midnight? Adam checked his watch again. It read 11:29 p.m. His mother usually overreacted when trying to prove her point, especially when it came to time. Mum, it's not even past yet. Look. He raised his wristwatch to her face. Sharon slapped his arm away. Do you remember what you promised me? She gave him a look that made him feel like he was 6 years old again. Mum, it's not my fault, I swear. We got stopped by police and... Stopped by police? She gasped. Raising her children right was everything to Sharon. She'd raised her children alone ever since their dad disappeared. Adam's father went to work one day and just never came back. No goodbye, no note, just gone. Raising 2 children on benefits was hard and they never had much money. But Sharon did the best she could with what she had, and for the most part they were happy. As far as Sharon was aware, Adam had never been involved with the police before. He knew that unless he came up with a good story right now, things could go from bad to worse. Mum, don't freak out. It was nothing. They thought we were causing trouble, but we weren't. I swear. After that, they just let us go. Adam saw the worried expression wasn't leaving his mother's face, and he began to doubt whether this was a good story to use. Should have bloody said I was mugged. Sharon respected the law and actually liked police officers. The only experience she had with them was when they investigated her husband's missing person case. They were extremely thorough and helped her get back on her feet when she had no one else to turn to. Adam, tell me the truth. What happened? What did you do? The police wouldn't stop you for no reason. Adam was pleased that at least she was buying the story, but he wasn't out of the woods yet. Mum, I swear, I did nothing. Z, Adil, and Nikita were with me. You can call them and ask them if you want. He knew she would never do that. Not in the middle of the night, at least. We were all just chilling in the park and it was almost 11. I was actually leaving to come home and the police walked by. He kept firm eye contact and tried to sound as believable as he could. He read somewhere that visualizing the fake scenario in his mind made telling it a lie more realistic. He started imagining his own story. They saw me walking away and must have thought I was walking away because I had something to hide. So they called me back and the two officers searched and questioned us. They didn't find anything and told us to go home. If he were an actor on stage, this is where he would have paused for a standing ovation for his amazing acting skills. He held her gaze and tried to look as genuine as he could. He tried not to think about how this situation had just become an astronomical lie involving the police. He was making it up as he was going along and hadn't thought it through this far. But there was no backing out now. He was all in. He had to tread carefully, one inconsistency, one slip-up, and she'd know something was off and catch him out. Sharon's worry dissipated somewhat. She now had a more inquisitive look upon her face. "Questioned you," she probed as she stood up, her hands now firmly on her hips. "What did they ask you?" Adam wasn't expecting to go into details. The question caught him by surprise. Drugs. They wanted to know if we had drugs on us." Adam instantly regretted bringing up the subject. Damn it, why didn't I say knives or guns or bazookas? Dumbass. His mind reeled back to the time when his mother found a tiny bag of cannabis in his school uniform. He'd managed to convince her at the time that it was his friends and that he didn't smoke himself, but that lie just made his mother skeptical of all his friends, which was just as bad, if not worse, for his social life. Sometimes there was no winning with her. In retrospect, he wished he'd just confessed to it back then. But knowing his mother, she'd have him in rehab by now. "Drugs," Sharon blurted as she walked to the lights and flicked them on. Adam expected this. He was smart enough to know that red eyes were a dead giveaway. As usual, he'd used eye drops before leaving the park, but wasn't sure if the violent seizure he experienced had caused his eyes to redden again. She looked into his eyes carefully and then up and down to see if there was anything out of place. When she was finally satisfied, she walked over to him and slapped his arm. "And what did they find?" she asked expectantly. "Nothing, I told you. If they had, I'd have been in jail right now. I don't want you hanging around with that Z anymore." She never had anything against Z per se, but whenever there was trouble, Z always seemed to be around. "Mum, Z is cool. He had nothing to do with any of this. You're making such a big deal about this, just like I knew you would." He tried to act annoyed. He then took a deep breath, pretending to calm himself down. "Please, Mum, I'm tired and I just want to go to bed now. Is that okay?" He tried to soften his tone and lay on the charm, reminding her that he was still her baby boy. "Get lost," she conceded. "I'll let you off this time. But next time you're not home on time, you can stay out permanently. Don't bother coming back." Adam had heard that threat before, and he knew she was only saying that for dramatic effect. Adam turned around and let out a quiet sigh of relief. Frecking close one. He headed down the narrow hallway and towards his bedroom. Sharon took a deep breath and sighed as she sat back down. She had no idea how to manage him anymore. Sometimes she'd wonder, would he have been more sensible had his father been around? To her, he was still her little boy, trying to be a grown-up. But handling a child was very different to handling a teenager. "There's food in the fridge if you're hungry," she called out. Grateful to finally be alone in his room, Adam now had time to think. What the hell happened back there? His mind was spinning with what felt like endless unanswered questions. Who was that man? Why did he help me? Why did I black out like that? How did he know where I lived? Just as he felt like he was losing his mind, something clicked. It was only a small part of the puzzle, but it was a glimmer of light on an otherwise dark mystery. "My nightmares," he recalled. There wasn't much to go on since Adam could never quite remember what happened in his nightmares, nor recall what exactly made them so terrifying. But there was a strong connection with what happened on the street today and the feeling he felt immediately after having a nightmare. He rattled his brain to think of any obvious patterns or triggers that caused the nightmares. He considered his dietary habits to see if he was reacting to something or having an allergic reaction. But he was certain it wasn't that. He pondered if his night terrors were related to his mental state of mind just before going to bed. He recalled events that occurred prior to his seizures, but no obvious patterns jumped out at him. He knew that they weren't fear-related. They weren't stress-related either. Nothing made sense. They seemed completely random. The only pattern he could spot was that over the past few months they had been occurring a lot more frequently. But today was different. Today, for the first time, the night terrors crossed over from the realm of childish nocturnal nuance into a real waking, crippling disability. Suddenly, Adam became worried. What if I'm sick? What if there's something wrong with my brain? Adam had no idea what the symptoms of a brain tumour were, so he decided to investigate. He walked over to his desk, sat on his swivel chair and flipped open his laptop. His desk was cluttered with semi-complete coursework from various classes. Damn, gotta hand that essay in soon, he reminded himself as he tidied up the pages, waiting for the laptop to boot up. He nostalgically browsed through his vintage pile of classic hip-hop CDs that he no longer listened to, but couldn't bear to part from. His messy room was merely an extension of his cluttered desk. His clothes were scattered on almost every inch of the floor. His mother always nagged him about the mess, but as far as he was concerned, he had a system. His mother only ever made the mistake of clearing his room once. Adam couldn't find his favourite hoodie for a week after that and insisted it was her fault. Since then, his mother stopped clearing his room as long as he promised her to be tidier. His walls were plastered with posters of Tupac, Notorious B.I.G., and other famous rappers, along with posters of his favourite movies, most of which involved gangsters, guns, and drugs. He loved movies by Quentin Tarantino. A large black-and-white poster of Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta from the famous gun-pointing scene in Pulp Fiction dominated his main wall. He must have watched that movie 100 times. It was the first time he truly fell in love with the gangster movie genre. He loved acting out the Pulp Fiction scenes with his friends. He once went through the entire movie in his head and accurately rearranged the scenes in chronological order. He was proud of the accomplishment, even though his friends thought he was crazy and had way too much time on his hands. The login screen chimed to life, and Adam spun back around and logged in. Adam Googled the words, brain tumour symptoms. Google instantly returned the results, all 25,000 of them. Adam clicked on the first link on the UK's NHS website. He read through the symptoms and gulped as he felt a sense of dread overcome him. Headaches, memory problems, pressure on the brain, dizzy spells, seizures and fits. Oh my God, I've got most of these symptoms. He took his time and read through everything, from symptoms to surgery. He finally turned away and looked at himself in the mirror in despair. I've got a brain tumour. He became depressed and anxious, and the happy buzz from the marijuana completely faded away. The only thing that didn't make sense to him was why he wasn't having fits. The website said that sufferers usually have seizures, but then it suddenly all made sense. MY nightmares aren't nightmares, they're seizures. Adam recalled how his nightmares were occurring more and more often, and today what he suffered in the alleyway was a full-blown daytime seizure. Adam spun back around to his laptop and typed in, odds of surviving a brain tumour. The results weren't good. 40% of those diagnosed died within the first year, and only 20% survived 5 or more years. Adam's heart sank as he slumped back into his chair. His shock turned into sadness as he contemplated how he'd tell his mother. The thought of dying so young and leaving behind his family and friends broke his heart. How long do I even have left? There's so much stuff I'll never get to do. He closed the laptop screen and slowly made his way back to the living room, where his mother was still sat watching Jem's TV. Mum, I have to tell you something. Her maternal instincts could tell from the way he said those words that this was going to be bad news. What is it, Adam? Her voice was cautious and she braced herself. Adam wasn't going to beat around the bush with this. Mum, I think I have a brain tumour. She closed her eyes and shook her head to help process what she just heard. What? she replied, hoping she had misheard. She was prepared for almost anything, but she wasn't prepared for that. What makes you say that? She questioned skeptically. This was it. Time for the truth. I've been having these nightmares and headaches for a couple of years now, and they come and go, and it's no big deal. But today I had one in the street. Mum, it was so bad that I just collapsed. Sharon gasped and realized that he wasn't joking about this. Someone helped me home while I was unconscious. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd get worried. Sharon stared at him, lost for words. Adam could tell she was trying to process the bombshell he was dropping on her. I've just been researching the symptoms on the internet, and I can't hide it from you anymore. I'm scared now. I think I need to go to the doctors. Adam broke eye contact from his mother. Her eyes were filling with the type of empathy only a mother was capable of, and seeing it made the whole thing feel real. I think I have a brain tumor. Sharon's eyes were wide with shock. The voices on the television felt distant and muted, as if the hosts of the show themselves had realized how serious the conversation was and considerately turned their own voices down. The light from the TV was projected onto Sharon's face in the otherwise dark room. Turn the light on, Adam. Her voice was soft and concerned. Adam flicked the switch and sat on the sofa across from her. In the light, Adam witnessed a look he had never seen on his mother before. She sat there in stunned silence, but he could tell her mind was racing and she couldn't collect her thoughts to speak. She looked up at Adam, and as she did so, a single tear ran down her cheek. Seeing it made Adam emotional too, and he looked at the ceiling to stop his own tears from falling. She quickly wiped it away and tried her best to compose herself. "We're going to the hospital right now," she commanded, her voice cracked with emotion. Adam knew she'd say that. "Mum, please," he begged. "It's the middle of the night and I'm really tired. It's not an urgent situation and they're going to take forever to see us. I don't want to sit on those hard plastic chairs all night." Both Adam and Sharon had a lot of experience of going into the A&E department at odd hours of the night. Sydney suffered from asthma and occasionally had attacks so bad that going to the hospital was the only option. She knew Adam had a point. The nurses wouldn't prioritise him as they wouldn't consider the situation an emergency. "Are you sure you don't want to go right now? It'll only take 10 minutes in a taxi. How are you feeling now?" "I'm fine now, just tired." She walked over and inspected him closely, and other than looking a little drowsy, he looked completely normal to her. "Okay, fine," she conceded. "But first thing tomorrow morning, make sure you're dressed by 9 a.m. We're going to the doctor's office. I want Dr. Dutter to take a look at you properly." "Okay, Mum." Adam turned and headed back to his room. "Hey, do you want anything? Are you hungry?" "I'm okay, Mum. Just want to rest." Adam got up and began walking to his room. "Set your alarm for 8 a.m. Let's be there first so we don't have to wait long." "Will do, Mum." Adam closed his bedroom door. He took a deep breath and breathed out sharply. Boy, that was tough. He glanced at the clock. It was approaching 1 a.m. and he knew he didn't have long to go before he had to wake up again. He hated waking up early. Dressed in his pajamas and now laying in bed, he reflected on the conversation he just had with his mother and realized that he felt so much lighter, as if a burden had been removed. It reminded him of a saying he'd heard somewhere. A problem shared is a problem halved. Sharon sat there staring at the television, but all she could think about was Adam. Tears were streaming down her face and she considered the possibility of losing him. "I'm not going to let that happen. No way." She got up and turned off the TV and prepared for bed. Tomorrow was going to be an important day. Chapter 3. Recruitment. As night descended in the West End of London, the street lamps and neon signs rejuvenated the concrete streets with a new vitality. Parts of London were transformed once the sun set, becoming unrecognisable from their prior forms. During the day, the busy banks and popular landmarks dominated, only to become deserted icons of history during the night. But then, magically, the derelict and intricate alleyways became arteries of life as shops lit up bright signs, attracting tourists like moths to a flame. Tourists flocked to affluent Knightsbridge to see the sights and visit the prestigious department stores that Knightsbridge was famous for. Above the streetlights in an 8th-floor penthouse apartment, Belkin gazed down on all the shoppers rushing around, busy in their own lives, oblivious as to how vulnerable their world was to an impending doom. He caught his own reflection in the windowpane. He looked deep into his dark eyes. The tall, muscular figure staring back looked all but forsaken, but yet at the same time determination to complete the mission was burning within him. The door clicked and swung open. Belkin didn't need to turn around to know it was Sash. She walked through the hallway and into the open, square-shaped living room of the apartment. The penthouse was beautifully minimalistic with a striking red, white, and black theme running throughout. The suite was encapsulated with floor-to-ceiling glass windows all around that provided amazing panoramic views of London. But the penthouse itself was more than just a home. It was headquarters. Sash removed her shoes before she stepped down into the recessed lounge area. She knew how much Belkin hated people walking over the plush white carpet in outdoor shoes. She sat down on the white leather sofa with her feet up, waiting for Belkin to acknowledge her. "Well?" she finally said impatiently. "Where is he?" "Sash, he's not ready." "What?" she exclaimed in disbelief. "We've been watching him for years. He's showing the signs." Adam had been on their radar for several years. His heritage made him a strong potential candidate. Belkin continued to look out the window. "If we engage him before he's ready, we run the risk of losing him altogether." It was clear to Sash that Belkin didn't want anything to jeopardize the mission. "I've been thinking about this for a while," he continued. "The next step is critical. Had it not been for the fact that we're on a deadline, I'd have left it another year." "Belkin, weren't you the one who told me that time stoppers should be aware once they're 16 at the latest?" Sash recalled how young she used to think that age was when she first started out in this business. But now she wished she could condition them at the age of 10. The hardest part was the training. Most just weren't mentally prepared. "As a general rule, yes," Belkin replied. 16 is the age the process dictates, but Adam... Belkin paused to turn and face Sash. "Adam is different." Belkin seemed bothered about something, as if there was something else on his mind. Sash rarely saw Belkin this concerned. Sash had never known Belkin to swerve off plan. It was completely out of character. The plan was to intercept today. Judging by what you're saying, he's obviously not here. So what happened? "It's his trigger." He paused as if to recall the scene he witnessed earlier. "They're seizures, and they're nothing like I've ever seen before." Belkin walked down into the square-shaped recessed lounge area and sat across Sash. "His power is immense. I've never seen a time stopper collapse and black out from his trigger before." "He blacked out?" Sash sat up. "What exactly happened?" Belkin explained how Adam collapsed in the alleyway before he had the chance to talk to him. He described the seizure Adam experienced and explained how someone else suddenly appeared and carried him home unconscious as he hid out of sight. He described how he followed the stranger who carried him to his block of flats and left him there before disappearing into the night. He explained how he continued to watch him to make sure he woke up safe and was in a fit state to go home. Belkin believed that it was a sign that tonight wasn't the night they were destined to meet. He had to be patient and try again. Sash started considering causes for the seizures and wondered who the mystery man was. She went through his file in her mind, a file she had helped create and knew inside out. "Do you think it's the cannabis habit reacting with his abilities?" she wondered. "It's unlikely," Belkin replied. "Alexander smoked cannabis and it didn't affect him like this." Sash wasn't expecting to hear that name, and for a moment she lost her train of thought. Poor Alexander. What a sweet boy he was. One of the hardest parts of the job was keeping professional boundaries, but over the years she learned to develop a wall. It kept her cold and detached. It helped with the emotional turmoil of losing candidates on missions or during training. Belkin's point was valid. Prior time stoppers used cannabis recreationally with no adverse effects on their abilities. There was no correlation between the times when Adam was intoxicated and the occurrence of his seizures. They seemed completely random. We will uncover the mystery behind his trigger and train him accordingly in time." "And the man?" Sash inquired. "A good Samaritan, perhaps, or maybe a family friend. I can't be sure. I didn't get a look at his face, but he knew where he lived. Oddly, he didn't wait for Adam to come around, nor did he take him up to his flat. It's suspicious." Belkin stood up and walked towards Sash. "Our first step, as you know, is an introduction, but we'll take it slow with Adam." Belkin paused and looked into the distance, recalling previous failures. "I don't want to make the mistakes I've made with the others." "The others weren't your fault, Belkin. They knew what the risks were. You did your best with them. We all did." It was obvious Sash was trying to comfort him, but Belkin didn't need comforting. He needed results. "I have every faith that Adam is the one we've been looking for. I can't afford to get it wrong with him. There's not enough time. Everything about engaging him must be perfect." He paused and looked at Sash. "Therefore, I'm changing protocol." Sash raised her eyebrows in exaggerated surprise. "Okay. This time you're going to make first contact." Sash couldn't hide her excitement. "I'm honored." She smiled. She'd never been trusted with first contact before. It was usually a make-or-break situation, and Belkin always handled it. Excited by the news, Sash began thinking of creative ways to attract Adam's attention. "Do you have something in mind?" she queried. "Or am I in complete creative control?" "No, this one is yours," Belkin replied. "I think you can handle it, and I'd like to see the style of your approach." "All right," Sash beamed. "Belkin, you won't regret it." Belkin smiled back. "I know." Chapter 4. Health Check. Adam stared at himself in the mirror of his bathroom. He looked at the small clock on the bathroom ledge. Crap, it's already 8:45. He was already dressed but hadn't eaten breakfast, and his belly was rumbling. But today he couldn't tell if it was rumbling because he was hungry or because he was nervous. "Adam, hurry or we'll be late," called Sharon from the kitchen. "We have to be there early for emergency appointments or we'll be sitting waiting all day." "Let's go, Mum. I'm ready." Adam walked into the kitchen and noticed Sydney having her breakfast watching Judge Judy on the small kitchen television. Adam wondered whether his mother had told his sister what was going on. "Sid, your brother and I are going to the job centre, not sure how long it'll take, but call me if you need me." Sydney sniggered and almost choked on her cereal. "Oh, is Mummy coming to help you talk to all those grown-ups, eh, Adam?" Sydney and Adam used any chance to get in digs with each other. Back when they were kids, handling Sydney was easy. If she got out of line, a few punches from Big Brother did the trick. But now the game had changed. Fighting was no longer an option, and his physical advantage counted for nothing in verbal warfare. "Shut up, Sid. They said I needed her signature, all right?" Adam almost surprised himself at how quickly he was able to create a plausible lie. Sharon stared at him uncomfortably. He read her eyes. She was clearly unhappy about lying any more than necessary. Adam remained quiet after that and ate his breakfast as quickly as he could. He wished he could tell Sydney the truth right now and watch that smug little smile disappear off her face. But despite how he sometimes loathed her, he knew that deep down she cared about him, and he had to admit he cared about her too. He didn't want her to worry until all the facts were clear. "Come on, Mum," Adam said as he shoved the last spoonful of cereal in his mouth. "Let's get this over and done with." End of part 1.